Ei, pessoal, aqui é a Elise. Eu vim para dar um recado rápido, mas muito relevante para você que vai fazer a prova domingo agora. O Clipping é a principal plataforma de estudos para quem sonha em ser diplomata. Acreditamos na democratização do acesso ao CACD e buscamos auxiliar a todos a se preparar com autonomia e gastando. Além da plataforma, que oferece compilado diário de notícias, plano de estudos personalizado por roteiro e uma série de questões inéditas objetivas, nós estamos com cursos focados em cada momento da prova. Sim, você consegue estudar com a gente desde os primeiros passos até o momento da sua aprovação. Pensando nisso, ao final da aula de hoje, vamos lançar um novo projeto que vai te permitir se preparar ainda para o CACD desse ano. Então fique com a gente, ótima aula e te encontro em breve.
Hi everyone, hope you can hear me. Welcome. Let me get everything ready, and we've got a great class hopefully today for you. Great time at last, the test is coming, and I'm just going to get my slides and then we'll get going. Here we are. Great to see you all. I'm going to try and follow the chat as well, if I can. It might be a bit difficult for me. I'm not as expert as the other two, as Shaun Dowling and Tongai, but I'll try and keep switching backwards and forwards. So, but let's get going, shall we? 30th in the afternoon is the test. At last, how long will we be waiting? 2 years? It feels like forever for this test, but let's get going. And I'll actually check on the thing. Good, hi, hello everyone. I'll just, good afternoon, yes. Time to get going. Let's get started, yeah. But good to see you all. I'll wait till we're at the end with some questions, because it's going to be difficult for me to go backwards and forwards. So between the chat, if I can do it, I will. All right, but I've got slides, so that's really what I want to do. So let's get going. Fine, so now this chance is a change in your life. Let's focus on this change. And we have to change also to speak in English. You've been listening to Portuguese for the last sessions. You're going to listen to most of the time in these sessions Portuguese, but now it's time to think in English. And even for the day of the exam on Sunday, it's the afternoon, after you finish, sometimes it's better you get a book and start reading in English before the next section. Okay, I know the second part will also be in Portuguese, but it's good to, in a way, change and, of course, think in English. So let's do a little exercise to get you thinking in English. Now, you can't shout out to me the answers, but we'll have this little exercise and get you to think more in English for the next hour and a half. So we've got this nonsense word we're going to look at, and we're going to change it. Let's see if you can do it. Here's the first one. I'm not going to say the sentences because there's some pronunciation. So, but it helps to get you thinking into English before we look at the test. Here we go. So here's the first question. Think about it. Of course, I can't hear you all, but think about it. Second question, with this nonsense word. The nonsense word stin. B. Okay, C. Hope it's easy. Very good for your spelling, but that's for the second phase, of course. D. Easy. E. Some pronunciation here. F. Conjugating this word. Okay. This is probably the biggest mistake in phase 2, conjugation of a verb. And last one, G. Okay, let's go. See the answer. Easy? Let's find out. So, how is stin pronounced? And it's pronounced, of course, it's pronounced stein. It becomes a diphthong from I to ein when we have the E. Of course, that's pronunciation. And that's a problem with spelling too, okay? People get the wrong vowel, okay, because they hear it differently. The next one, B, what's the present participle of the verb stin? So stinning, the present, not the past, the present participle, the double N, because we have one verb, sorry, one syllable, one vowel, and one consonant. When we have that, we double the last letter, okay? Very important for spelling. That's all for phase 2. C, a person who teaches is a teacher. A person, what do you call a person who steins? It's a diphthong. A steiner, no double here, a steiner. What is the plural of gimme? Of course, the spelling's changed to gimmies, IES. How do you think the word pronounced is spelled? It's spelled Greek. Greek, one weird word. Doesn't mean anything, don't worry, it's just for fun. I splow, you splow, and here she splows, ES. We need ES after this, okay? The spelling has changed. And the prefix of the word stin, and it means again, is of course to restin. Now, of course, the word is not very important, but this conjugation and changing of the verb, this word is affected by pronunciation, it's affected by the way we got to spell, and of course, what form of verb it is, whether it's a verb or a noun. I hope this is a bit of fun to get you going, okay, thinking a little bit more in English and get you ready. Okay, so let's get into this test. Fingers crossed, it's easier than last year. I think IAGIS is a bit easier anyway, but we're going to analyze it. So if you've been with me before, some of this information you will see again, which is great because it will consolidate your understanding of the test even more. For those who are new, who've not been with me live before, lots of this information will be invaluable for you. You recognize the type of question a lot easier and understand what the examiner is looking for. So we're going to go into it a lot more depth, okay? So what we're going to look at, of course, is the facts first, what we know about the test. And then we're going to analyze the questions. There are 5 main questions we're going to look at them in more detail. And then we're going to look at exam strategies, of course. Don't have a lot of time, but if you've got questions, by the way, if you've got questions, how much do you think you need to pass or anything else, let's leave that till the end, everyone, all right? Because then I can go back to see the chat on the YouTube, okay? And then we're going to see on a crystal ball what is we think, well, what do we think is going to be on the exam? Okay, so let's make this chance a change. Okay, so of course we know that English is the most important part of the test. Well, I think that, of course, I think it's the most important, but I'm a bit biased. Of course, it's 12% of the TPS is English. 9 questions. Used to be 12, of course. So if you've done the old CESP tests, there were 12 questions, a lot more. But of course, the change was made when phase 2 became a qualification and not a classification criteria a few years ago. But Língua Inglesa, like Portuguese, still very, very important, especially when it comes to the second phase. But I'll talk about the second phase as well at the end. If you've got any questions, got a course coming up, of course. I'm here at Clipping. We'll focus, make sure you understand the strategy for the second phase. For those who've been studying with me already in the Extensivo, you should be already ready. Already ready, that's difficult to say sometimes. But remember, of course, this part is going to be in the afternoon. What else do we know? Well, we know it's going to be, there's going to be 2 pages, usually at the start of the afternoon. Got 4 texts. I don't expect it to be 3. I've been making tests with 3 texts with 3 questions each. The examiner uses 4 texts. It's easy for him with the 9 questions. Okay, so I'll have 2 or 3 questions. We'll look at them in the test. This is basic. I'm sure you know this, but it's good to go through just to make sure we're all on the right page. Then, of course, the second page will have 2 texts again with 2 questions, and the degree becomes more literary. I think the last one is a more literary text, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The questions are always true or false questions, and of course, are 4 statements you've got to answer true or false to. Okay, of course, they've got to be certo, errado, and you're going to complete that on the answer paper. So they're always like that. It's never changed. Hasn't changed in years. It's a perverse test for me, but there we are. Never changed, true and false. So each question, of course, each question has this, what we call when we're making the test, the STEM question that tells us what you've got to look at. And we have these 2 options, of course, because it's true or false. So are they going to look at lexis, grammar, single words, semantic aspects, okay, vocabulary to single words, or ideas, okay, but we're going to look at, let's keep going. Now, the true or false questions, I'm going to tell you probably everything you already know. Of course, there's, if you get it correct, you get 0.25 for each of the true or false statements you answer. You're either going to get them correct, 0.25, get it wrong, going to lose points, 0.25. So if you don't know, you don't answer it. If you're not sure, don't answer it. If you think you've got an idea, don't answer it. If you're 70% sure, 75% sure, okay, you might need to guess in a way, but guess with certainty, please. Guess with certainty. You'll know which ones, we'll go through which ones are easy, which you should get a good, you should get right in this session. But remember, if it's difficult, if you don't know, please don't guess. Unless you're doing so bad, you think you're not going to pass anyway, maybe it's worth a risk. Now, the TPS over in the CESP and IAGs has always had about 50% true questions and 50% false questions. Now that helps us, okay? Because if you think you're putting lots and lots of false answers and not a lot of true ones, then we can make an assessment that we're doing wrong, okay? I've gone through this, I've gone through all of the old tests and done these statistics. I did it in the extensive course. We looked at this, we looked at how each year was, had the same balance of true and false questions, okay? So we can be fairly certain it's going to be the same this year as well in the IAGs. Okay, now let's have a look at the 5 main types of questions. Now there are 5 main types. I split them into 2 areas, really. We're going to look at it. There is the linguistic questions, which is usually vocabulary and grammar. There's the overall idea, principal idea, questions of attitude, factual questions, and deduction and inference. So there are these 5 different types. We're going to, of course, go through them in a bit more detail now. But when you analyze the last year's IAG's questions, okay, we had these 2 forms, either things were lexical or textual comprehension or reading comprehension. We can split them down into these, and we found out, of course, the majority are linguistic or textual questions, okay, a lot more and understanding the text. So that's what makes it in a way difficult. So you've got to be much more careful with the vocabulary questions. You've got to be more certain with them. All right. With the reading comprehension, we'll have a look at the strategy to look at. But this is surprising that so many are looking at vocabulary, or substitutions, synonyms, okay, comparing one phrase with another, not the overall understanding of the text. Okay, so, yeah, what else? So let's have a look at, of course, this linguistic question first. Now, here it is. I'm not going to practice my Portuguese. I'm going to look at this. So it's normally alternatives of vocabulary, which we'll see. You've done these probably in all of your preparation with all of the questions I've done over the last years. Done lots of alternatives. Okay, the last intensive course we did many different words. I'm sure what we've done will come up on the tests. If you've not gone through the intensive vocabulary course, it's what you should be doing in the last weeks, especially the exams that I've been doing. And at the end of the last, well, in the second intensive course we did, I did lots of excellent, I'm quite happy with them as well, exercises for this particular question. We were only looking at alternatives of vocabulary. Okay, so download them and do that information. Of course, the videos have got the answers and with me discussing them. So, but the texts are very good. Less so, of course, are the grammar areas. Okay, here also we've got references, which we'll look at as well. And then more so in IAGs are these lexical comprehension questions. I think that's what we've moved a lot towards Lexist and single words, because this is looking for lexical and textual comprehension. But let's have a look. Here mostly it's synonyms, but the reference question which uses it, this or that, or as we saw last year, that use latter. They are those pointing words pointing backwards or forwards that were used to show reference. They're the easy questions. You should get them right, okay? when you see its references, they're the ones you should make sure they're not difficult at all. I don't think so. And they should be easy points. Of course, when we talk about lexical comprehension, we talk about vocabulary, single words. So the examiner sometimes vocabulary, he's thinking of single words. And when he looks at something that's lexical comprehension, he's looking at phrases, maybe phrases which change prepositions, okay? The prepositions have got to be part of the phrase. And that's lexical comprehension, okay? So let's have a look at these. And then, of course, we've got the principal idea, okay? And we've got, there's 2 questions last year, and they use like a phrase, the general tenor, of course, the general idea of the text, okay? It could be, of course, the attitude as well, which we'll look at, but the question asks, what's the general tenor of the text? So you look at the general idea, but it requires a little bit more of deduction. Then there are ones of attitude, okay? And the main thing of these attitudes, you can read this, of course, read this later, but I've got lots to do, and I want to get through to any questions as well at the end. So here, the attitude of the examiner. This usually, I find it comes at the start or at the end of the text. As these texts are small, sometimes only 3 paragraphs, sometimes 4 paragraphs. It has to be out in the first, although well, in the first one, it gives us that impression. But there should be simple enough to answer. So last year, the questions were the author urges. So there's attitude. He could be suggests, or he believes, or if he warns. These verbs can change. Or the ultimate goal of the author could also be related to attitude, which was, again, one of the questions last year. Then there's the factual ones. Not many are factual, believe it or not. Okay, there were 4 questions last year. These should be easy because you can find these in the text. There's no deduction. There's no overall understanding of everything you've got to read. So, of course, the main tip is to get that pen and underline those that area where you find that information, so you are 100% sure that it's correct. Read it and you think, okay, I think it's correct. No, underline it. Make sure you are focused that that is right. Now, here's a funny thing I always say with my CPE classes when I used to teach Cambridge Proficiency. The pen you're using to revise is the pen you've got to use of the exam. Why? Because it's the one you've used to study with and it knows all of the answers. Keep that lucky pen together. All right, the pen that knows all the answers. It'll do the exam for you. Okay, bit of a joke there. All right then, now remember, if you can't find the information, it's sort of factual, you can't find the information, the logical decision is that the answer is false. Okay, because they're true and false questions. So if it's not there, the answer must be false. So, okay, but normally these type of statements are put into 2 sections, which we'll see when we analyze the questions a bit more. So you're looking at 2 pieces of information, not just one in the text. Okay, so here we see last year we had these questions. This was from the last text of last year's exam. And here we can see these questions are separated into 2 areas. So underline those areas, make sure it's clear. Get that magic pen and underline those areas. It really helps you to focus on the information. Okay, remember, if you're focusing on the first information and you can't find it, then the whole statement is false. If you can find these two pieces of information, then they could be true, and then you analyze. If they're correct or not. Okay, but if you can't find the information, it doesn't happen a lot, but it will be false. All right, it's a simple strategy. Okay, and if you find the information, you see it's the opposite, then you know it's going to be false. So this making deductions, making logical decisions are important in these reading comprehension questions. Okay, now, of course, strategy, underline everything, be clear, be sure. If you, for example, if you decide to leave English until last, I suggest you do English first. Some people like to leave English till last. Then when you go back, see those, and go back with that pen and underline that information. Be clear where it is. You don't need all of the text. Okay, it's usually you find that specific area and it helps you focus, because that's what's important. You are going crazy, time is going against you, and calming down and being clear is what that pen is for. All right, drinking water, relaxing, breathing. It's a stressful test. Okay, so that magic pen help you relax too. Okay, so underlining is always the best thing. It helps in the second phase, of course, when you're coming to summaries. You've got that same magic pen to underline the main information, but it's the same sort of technique for the text. Fine. Then the fifth type of question, which is more common, I think, in the AGIS and another test, are of deduction. We saw the general tenor used in the previous question as in the attitude, but it also means you've got to do some deduction, inference. And last year, the question asked, it can be inferred. So there's a clear inference that's necessary for this one. So here, of course, it's looking at what it says there. You have to draw your own conclusions, okay, and make a judgment. Now, we can complain about this if necessary with these ones, but it should be quite clear. So the exam doesn't have to annul a question. All right, so be clear what you're going to answer. If it's not clear, the deduction is not clear, then it's going to be false. All right, clarity means is what you need to answer each of those questions. All right, I have doubts too with these questions. I sometimes get one or two wrong because I didn't read the question correctly, because I didn't underline. But I'm a lazy student because I'm used to seeing these all of the time. I get crazy about them, but you don't want to take that risk on the day of the test. Okay, if it's clear, your answer is going to be true or false, and you're going to be able to get 0.25. If it's unclear, leave it, think about it, maybe come back to it, or don't answer it. Okay, so these are the 5 different types. Let's have a look at the lexical comprehension strategy in a way we need. Let's consider that. Okay, so that was where we're looking at this vocabulary, the single words, the grammatical areas, the referencing, and the phrases, the lexical comprehension. Let's have a little bit of a exercise. Some of you may have seen this before, but it helps again to get you focused, ready, thinking about what's going to happen at the weekend. So the easiest one, I think, is the referencing. Let's have a look at this text we've got here. Have a read from me. Have a read of this text in the box. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. It's a simple one. Okay, so we have these pronouns, he, that, his, or who, relative pronoun here, and they are pointing the way of where to go. Either they're pointing backwards or they're pointing forwards, and there are three types of references, but there are only two that's on the exam. Okay, so let's look at the first part. He is backwards or forwards? Backwards. That, forwards. His, backwards. And who? Backwards. You see, 3 out of the 4 are backwards. It tends to be where you've got to go back and find the answer in the text. Okay, so these are called, of course, anaphoric references and cataphoric references, and the backward one is the one that normally comes in the exam, and you find it with it. Twice last year they used it, and many other of the CESP exams use it as the pronoun to be, which is referring back to a noun. So in that, sometimes, now what you've got to do there is go back and take your time, all right, with this one. They're easy. I think they're easy statements to get your score, all right? They should be guaranteed you get these. So take your time with them, 0.25, you should get them, okay? Because you're just looking back for the information, making sure it's referring to it. If you've got to understand that whole sentence between this reference and what came before it, and then it really shouldn't be too difficult. It should be quite obvious. We did lots and lots of practice of these over the last months. I'm tired of them. I'm sure you are as well. But if you've done all the practice, these should, of course, be, you should have no problem with this type of question. There were 2 with it last year, and we will see one with another reference as well. So there were 4 reference questions last year. So that's 1 point really, of 0.25, at 1 point of the 4 different ones that were on there. So easy ones, okay? Then, of course, let's move on. Okay, let's look at the single words, which we look at semantics, okay? Semantic, the meaning. So words are often defined by reference to the similar or differences with other words. For example, let's have a look. These 5 different types. We did this at the start of the intensive. If you didn't do it, then you're very lucky. You're going to see this for the first time. Those who have, you'll see it again. Okay, so, right then. So we've got either words have a similar meaning, or we've got words that have opposite meaning, or we have words that are from the same family, okay, lexical field, like we've got furniture, chair, table. Furniture, sorry, is the other one, but the overall lexical word, but table, chair, desk, shelves, all part of the same lexical set. Use them in furniture. Okay, same word with different meaning. Okay, so you have, look, the word lift. Lift could be to push up, but lift could be elevator. Okay, but they've got different meanings. It's the same word. Okay, the same word in similar meaning. We'll have a look at them in a moment. So these have all got different names. So we've got either one of these is an antonym, a synonym, call them polysemes, homonyms, and hyponyms. So the first one's easy. Words with similar or the same meaning, which is, you know what it is? Synonym, of course, which is the most popular on the test. Opposite, antonyms or Latin. Different words, but the same lexical field. Hyponyms, same word, different meanings. Homonyms, and same word, similar meaning. Polyseme. Now, these are all important to understand when we look more detail at the text. So in the exam, what do they mean to the exams? Well, the synonyms are the most common type of question. All right, so you're looking for similar words but the same meaning. Antonyms are not used. They were used a long time. There was one I think maybe 2 questions, CESP, years ago. So it's not used for a long, long time. I think probably, yeah, the last century. Okay, hyponyms, okay. This is used when they're usually 2 different words to find, okay, in the question, because sometimes the question asks 2 words, not just one changing with another. Homonyms, this is not important in the question, but important in the text, because they're used to make things either easier or more difficult in the style of text that's used. Okay, so it's not usually in the questions or the statements themselves. And the same word and similar meaning, of course, these are usually again when there are 2 options, as we'll see when we look at the types of questions. So for example, here, this was, I think, the first text that was on the last exam. So this is the IAGIS exam. And this is how the language was organized. We see here the blue and the red. So we can analyze these individual words and their meaning. Now, having a deep understanding of how they're organized in the text helps you understand, the overall comprehension of the text, and of course, gives you a better understanding of the statements. So as we're just focusing on these, okay, it helps you understand what the examiner is doing and how he's testing you. So, of course, here we've got in the exam red, struggle, fight, clash, war, they're all synonyms. So we see this might be about some sort of conflict. So that's what gives us the understanding. Okay, of the overall deduction of the text. Is it about war? It's about conflict? It's about a battle? And in blue, of course, we've got co-hyponyms, okay, for rules and norms, structure, standard, convention, methods, okay? So we've got these 2 different meanings in this paragraph, okay? We've got conflict and we've got norms, something that's usually at opposites with each other. So that's can be confusing. So sometimes analyzing what these similarities of words, okay, that helps to give us the meaning. Underline them, look at the text again. You've got difficulty with the deduction question, okay, or the attitude. These are the words we should be looking at, these nouns mainly, okay. So go look at it a little bit deeper. When we see that there, these synonyms or co-hyponyms are there, then we can say, okay, that's the overall understanding of the question. This is how I've got to comprehend what is being said. Okay, so it's interesting to go a little bit further. Of course, maybe you're stressed, you haven't got time, but the texts are set up like this. They're organized like this for the examiner to be able to make the questions that he's given you. Let's have a look again. Okay, and here this is where there was a third conditional in this section. So that was a good. So when I saw straight away this text, had it not been for, I thought it's going to use that question, because here we've got an inversion. So inversions, we've talked about inversions in other courses a lot. They're high level sentence forms, one that the examiner likes to see in phase 2, and will also use them in this type of exam. Of course, this is a conditional sentence, a third conditional, something you won't use in probably the second phase, but you might use in the questions, especially when they're telling a story. Okay, it's about something hypothetical here, right, as we see in the question. So we can always sometimes say, that's the grammar it's going to use, especially inversions. What other forms? Yeah, mainly that's the thing. If it's relative clauses, we're going to look at more with who or which, we're looking at more references with them, okay? But third conditional will be grammar. Okay, let's move on. I will, so just to be able to show you how it was a conditional, instead of saying, had it not been for the invention, traditionally or normally it would be, if it had not been for the invention, okay? Instead of had is inverted to if, okay? If you follow me on Instagram, I will have been mentioning these over the last months, okay? Probably need to do just one video on this, which I think about doing, because it can be confusing teaching on Instagram sometimes, but follow me on Instagram, all of these tips I've been doing to try and get people ready for when the exam comes. Okay, fine. Okay, let's have a look again. The second paragraph in this text we had. So here we had antonyms, sooner or later, that phrase, okay? And the green ones have got religion, religious, morality, creation, gospel, all words linked to religion. So we've got war in the first paragraph, religion here, standards. So we're getting those meanings and be able to understand what the statements are asking for. And here to do with money at the end, okay, currency, withdraw, circulation, coinage. So the currency of something, okay, so the cost of something, all used, okay. So these nouns are where we're getting the main meaning from, that we find them in the text, okay. So of course, naturally you're going to read them, but if you're struggling, you're not sure, go to these nouns, look at them again, see how they're similar, see how they're opposite, and then you get a much better understanding of these difficult texts, okay? Because the way they're organized with these nouns helps you define what the questions are going to be with knowing the overall meaning. Okay, good. Okay, here was the last section of this first text. Okay, and here we're we're looking at, of course, how some of these verbs are used. Now we're going to look at simple verbs like take, come, and have. In Iagis, much more than Sespi. Sespi didn't do this, but Iagis are using these, we call delexicalized verbs, verbs that don't have a lot of meaning, okay? Have an opinion, come to their own conclusion, take their interest. Interest is the meaning here. Conclusion, sorry for the spelling, is the meaning here. An opinion is the meaning here. So that's where we form the meaning. But they like to test these, let's say we think of simple verbs, irregular verbs, a lot more, okay? That shows in a way a higher level of speaking more than anything else, all right? Because they're not so Latin in many ways, okay? They're more, let's say, Germanic, I think. But again, the meaning is more obscure, so it makes it more difficult. So you have to be very clear. You see how the word that you use, render, here, render, and render, a lot more formal word, okay? And when we compare it to these simpler verbs, there are synonyms that can be used, right? So that's the thing to be watching. You've got to be very clear with these there. I don't think they're very difficult, for me, certainly. But if the render can be substituted with take or have or come, those simple verbs, that might be one of the questions this year. I expect it to be one, all right? Because I was surprised last year that they asked for this style of question. It's to deal with high-level lexis, okay? The examiner, we know, must be someone from university, teaching applied linguistics, to be able to do this type of question, okay? As the meaning is very much more opaque, then it seems to be a high level that you need to be able to have studied to give this type of question. It's a field of mine anyway. It's what I did during my master's, how to teach vocabulary, how to understand vocabulary. So it's much more familiar, but many teachers will find this very difficult to be able to look at. If you've been studying your Lexis and doing collocations, putting words together, then this type of question will be more familiar to you. Okay, let's check out my time we've got here. Okay, for 45 minutes. Maybe in 15 minutes I'll stop and then see if there's any questions, review the chat, okay? So this Lex Comprehension, okay, is when they say Lex Comprehension, just think of it as these chunks or groups of language, okay? You've got to understand that the phrase itself has one meaning, right? And maybe they will change a preposition or something in that phrase that shouldn't have a big amount, you know, a large difference in meaning. Because prepositions in Lexis don't really change the meaning. If it was in phrasal verbs, yes, but phrasal verbs you don't find on this exam. Forget phrasal verbs, they're not going to be here. And probably when you go into Rio Blanco, as I know very well, you're never going to probably use phrasal verbs very much. It's more formal, more elegant, more Latin language. It's more power. The currency of language needs to be more Latin, okay? It's more impressive. So the exam tends not to have phrasal verbs. So in a phrasal verb, of course, the changing of prepositions has a bigger change in meaning than they would in a lexical phrase. And also in the lexical phrases, that's those group of words, okay? There are not many words that can be changed, not many prepositions that can be changed, okay? Only one or two. It's not lots of opportunities to change. So, yeah, so this is one that's also particular to IAGs, a lot more. Okay, we've only got one question, one exam to look at. Okay, but there was a change. I felt it was easier. I feel phase 2 is easier as well. Thought the marking was easier, certainly, but that's for another time. You can ask me a question at the end if you want. Why? Okay. Fine, so we see this, for example, here. Question here is another correct preposition used with the verb compared is with, to compare with. So here, changing prepositions, okay? So I have to look at all of the phrase. Okay, so compared to and compare with. There's not really a big change in meaning in Lexis. Could be a change in meaning, possibly, yes. overall, there's never usually a change in meaning. So if you are going to guess, and you don't want to guess, of course, but if you're desperate, you want to guess, the meaning wouldn't change all that much, okay? So you probably call it true. But remember, we don't want to guess, we want to be sure. Okay, here had not been, of course, we looked at this grammar. Okay, and here's the reference. The fragment to its achievement, underlying pronoun refers to religious intensity. So we're going to go back to religious intensity, find in the text, we're going to get our magic pen, we're going to underline that, we're going to read, and we're going to underline it, and we're going to read that section and be 100% sure that we're going to get that easy point. All right, easy point. Okay, and then of course we've got, it says in the fragment. Fragment just means a section of language. So don't let it make you feel scared, okay? We use fragment in like as a clause, a section of language. It's just, you know, a phrase, thus, as it says here, thus, whereas the man in the street. So this is not very good because thus and whereas are two conjunctions, okay? That's what makes it more confusing. So the underlying adverb means as a result of what has been said or stated, can be replaced by hence. So the examiner, the sacanagem of the examiners was to put these two conjunctions together. Or I think it was false, this one. No, it was true. Hence and thus are synonyms, okay? Now, it's only asking for the meaning. So whether you have a comma here or not, someone sent me a few weeks ago an exam from São Paulo in English. I don't know, I can't remember, Cesaspri, I think, where they would ask with yet, whether yet could substitute thus. Now, yet tends not to take a comma after it, while thus does. And that was a problem there because it was only asking for the meaning, but it can be confusing with the grammar. So you've also got to be clear on these questions if it's asking for the meaning or it's asking for the grammar. In this style, we're only we're only asking usually for the meaning. If it's talking about the grammar, then we've got to be careful. In this question, what's it's asking for? As far as grammar is concerned, so then we've got to be careful. So is the grammar concerned? And let's say that this is yet, and yet doesn't need a comma, okay, then we could be false, okay? So we've got to be careful with that small little detail, okay? You've got to go back, what we're looking for, grammar. Okay, if it's asking for meaning, very, very clear, it's asking for meaning. Okay, fine. Okay, so let's keep analyzing these types of questions. Let me just move over to, just to check if you've got any questions, probably, hopefully not, but let's stop and share and let's move over and see what is on. Okay. Okay, let's go through these questions, okay. Let's go back to that. So, okay. Let's the questions here. Okay, so yeah, it is, Karine, is 50-50, right or wrong. I don't know in the other sections. It's important. It's a good thing to ask the other teachers that, okay? I think I do think Yaji's is a little bit easier, okay? Let's have a look. Yes, Bruno, I'm British, I'm Irish, but I've been here a long time. I'm very, very Brazilian as well, but don't ask me to speak Portuguese, okay? Because here if I worked for 10 years, Bruno, at Rio Branco, so I've worked there a long time. When you pass, you're going to be able to have to speak English all of the time with the teachers. There'll be no Portuguese, and it will improve your English a lot because you've been forced to speak in English. So is it British English? Well, most of the teachers at the time I've been there were always British, okay? So make sure you use the present perfect correctly. Let's have a look at any more things. Okay, so yeah, that's it for now. Let's continue. I don't see any more questions there. Let's go back and see how we're going. Okay, let's analyze a bit more these questions. So some typical questions from EADs, okay? So, of course, we've got to say with these questions, like this word, in the first paragraph, the word swades, difficult word, can be correctly replaced by areas. I found that difficult. So if you find it difficult, you've got to think very carefully whether you're going to answer that one. There will be one question that is very difficult. It's not obvious. Sometimes you can read the question and say, yeah, it is, but go back and read the context, all right? Okay, the same with this one, alternative vocabulary, your synonyms here, okay? But swathe is not a normal word to use, right? Now, lots of people would doubt the meaning of this. Now, even people who's native speakers, they would have doubt with this. So when we see this, you've got to be very careful. This is probably one you're not going to answer. All right, you've got to be careful. I don't want to lose 0.125 points. You've got to make that deduction. It's very important. Okay, it's better to get nothing than get something and take a risk. This one, okay, you've got 50-50 chance, but sometimes it's better not to answer. You're not going to lose anything. Saying blast, people understand blast as explosion. So why has it got to do with number? So we've got to go back and look at that context again. Now, in the question, it likes to do, I was talking to this on Instagram recently, negatives are very common in the text and in the question. So what's the silly thing we do? We get that magic pen and we put it over the negative area, not, okay, or even if it's a prefix like un or in, we read the question, the statement again without the negative, and then we get the meaning. All right, then we get the meaning, and then it's easier. But the not, the negative, can make it more confusing, because when you go to the text, they've probably got a negative there. All right, one will cancel each other out. Okay, so remove all the negative first and then make the deduction if it's right or wrong. All right, it's the best technique to use. Okay, questions use negatives quite a lot. Okay, probably is talking about deduction. Of course, probably is usually more certain than possibly, statistic-wise, okay? But probably we know that's a deduction question. Okay, so we've got to understand the text a lot more. Overall, what does it say? Or you go to a certain question, a section, and that will be your answer. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, here we've got the question with two options, and here you've got to be a lot more careful. Havoc and ravage, do they mean the same? Certain with some sort of destruction. I think this was correct in the answer. Okay, mean extensive or devastating destruction. Extensive destruction, devastating destruction. So it means something big. So havoc and ravage, yeah, they're large. So you've got to make that logical understanding. these two words, havoc and ravage, it may be they're the same. It's quite easy. But maybe in the question on this week's test, you've got to be careful that these two words are the same or not. Okay, they might be different. There are two options, so be very careful with these two options. Okay, so remember to split these sentences. These sentences are big. I'm going to show that in a moment. So split the sentence into two. Underline those areas, those two areas, so you can logically look for the information in the text. Okay, we looked at this. This third conditional is a grammar. Conditionals are quite important in the exam, not only, but also. Okay, in a way, this is a conditional sentence, had. Maybe starting with the negative adverb, like, again, as I said, not only, or rarely, or never. When they start the phrase, then you're going to have an inversion sentence, okay? And that's when the grammar changes. If you don't know about inversions, then you're going to, well, one of my books here must have had one of these grammar books. Here, I don't know what I have at the moment. Look at the Michael Vince Advanced Grammar. There's a section on there. I'm just looking where mine is. I'm doing advertisement for Michael Vince. There, you won't find it in an intermediate book. You'll find, here it is. We've done this as well on the course. We've used this book, okay? Michael Vince here, I think it's on section 11 and 12, but this is no version. Thank you. Macmillan gave me this a long time ago, so I must say thank you to them. So section 11 is about inversions. Be very careful with using this book, especially. It is more advanced than the test, okay? You have to have an advanced level, but you don't have to have a supreme advanced level that you know everything, okay? You know, lots of people would have difficulty using inversions. So do this with take a pinch of salt, as we say. You know, don't do it so seriously. Just understand the mechanics of inversions, how the word forms change, because they're not used to a great deal. All right, there's only one or two types of inversions you need to use. Okay, so anyway, let's show you again advanced grammar in use. Advanced language practice. Advanced grammar in use is okay. I'm just looking if there's intermediate book here. Okay, but it's vocabulary. You see, this exam is mostly vocabulary. So all of the texts, you've got to analyze that you're reading. Okay, last week I was discussing with Shaun Dowling about, of course, Orwell. Very good. Probably if you've got Orwell in English, then you read it. I know he's a fan. I know a farmer wrote to Wigan Pier in 1984. His text on the destruction of the English language, all of these texts there, that's a good level of literature to analyze words from, okay? That's very good, okay? So if you want to do a little bit of reading before the test, it's a bit late now, I suppose. Here, Orwell is a good one to use. Okay, fine, right then, so remember, they will have section one question. Here it's 38. That is only reading comprehension. This is where you should score maximum here. All right, that magic pen is very important. This is where you're going to score. Underline the information, take your time with the information. Okay, the question that we've just saw, swayed, it's difficult, don't answer it. But with these reading comprehension, this is where you should be getting. The information is there in the text. So you can find it. If it's not there, then it's then it's true or false. Of course, if the information's not there, it's always going to be false, okay? But you should find the information there. Then you've got the, if you find the information, then you can see if it's going to be true or the meaning will be false, okay? Can't find it, it's false. But so reading comprehension is a great chance for you to score points, okay? So you must take your time with them, right? Usually they come in one whole section. So that's 1 point you could get from these 4 different questions. Okay, fine. Then we talked about this type of question, okay? We looked in the text, we saw render, which does it mean make? So we looked at these verbs again, which is specific to iages, you know, these simple irregular verbs, make, take, do, set, keep, have, give. Other ones, they might add, this was a new question that didn't come up in CESP, right? So here is one which I think it's an easy question, all right? You've got to be very careful, all right? Because remember, make, have to substitute that to make these conclusions. Can we make these conclusions? Does that collocation go together? Yes, all right? So just substitute and you read the phrase, okay? Can be an easy question, right? But as if they put give or set, you say, okay, and does it render? So let's change it with give. Give these conclusions effectively? That might be possible, but does it naturally go together? Give these conclusions? No. Set these conclusions? No. Okay, have these conclusions? Well, have could maybe go there, okay? So the meaning is a little less obscure with them. So they're questions you can score points on as well. Good, all right. Also, let's look, last year they had, of course, we got questions with negatives in, that was in the text. And of course, last year, which was different, they used former and latter as referencing. So easy, those two. Okay, they were so easy. Because they're only referring back to they're referring back to 2 options, okay? And they're usually not very far apart. So that should be an easy question. The references are easy questions for you to do. Be confident with them. Good, okay, fine. Okay, so the questions, again, they could be mixed. Let's have a look. Largesse and generosity, we've got synonyms. Bestow and exchange, synonyms, okay? I'm not going to go through these too much, okay? Again, fragment, use that word fragment. To dwarf that could be correctly replaced with that contribute to. To dwarf causes to seem small and insignificant, okay, in comparison. So the meaning is not similar here. We can guess that, okay? With the text, we're talking about religion, that text we looked at previously. The fragment sanctuary or fulfillment in some greater lesser. Grail, holy grail, okay, could be correctly replaced with refuge or sanction, satisfaction, some great or lesser prize, which is true, okay? So analyze these different, meanings. Sanctuary, fulfillment, there are 2 options. Refuge, sanctuary, yes. Satisfaction, fulfillment, yes. So we can get your pen, underline these words to make sure that they correspond, that they logically have the same meaning, all right? So that's how the questions are on there. Sometimes there are 2 options you've got to be very careful with, even in the vocabulary. Good. So now, until the test, what tools are we going to use? Okay, go through the old tests, of course, using thesaurus.com to look for synonyms. Check the synonyms. Usually, the red synonyms on thesaurus.com are the most likely to be changed. Okay, so when you're studying a text and you see a word that you think, okay, I couldn't choose a better word or a different word, go to thesaurus.com and you'll be able to have alternatives and write them down. Write those down, because writing down helps with your memory, okay? Making effort, making some sort of decision are the things that cognitively makes your memory attract that information and keep it stored. All right, my voice is going. Okay, looking at the meaning, of course, Google Dictionary is fine. Why go look at anything else? It's there, it's no problem. Google, everyone thinks there's something wrong with Google. There's nothing wrong with Google. It's got artificial intelligence, it's updating, it's got more data than any other, of course, software. So, and now it's got to a stage where it's very advanced. So, you know, it's the best, probably one of the best references that there is. It's not static, it's always improving. So looking at these dyslexicalized verbs, okay, when we look, say, render, we found that make was the answer, right? Could have give, was possible, but make was the answer here because this meaning was similar. Okay, fine. Looking at osdic.com, this is a good site, okay, for homonyms and synonyms, okay, because they show the different meanings. Okay, look at this word strain, which was in the text. Strain towards the objective. Strain can mean have different or slightly different meanings. Strain could mean severe, okay, demand on strength, or it could mean here, injury, strain your leg, make an effort, put a lot of pressure on something, and make, again, a great effort to do something. So they give you these sentences and they help you to try and deduce the meaning, okay? To try and deduce the meaning. So those four, let's go back to them. So just using Thesaurus, Google, or osdic.com are good enough, all right, for you to get the information you need. So when you're studying, okay, so if you're going to use a text, decide to look at some text, look at The Economist, because The Economist, let's go, The Economist was used quite a lot in all of the exams. So they're the possible subjects in The Economist, and we've done lots and lots of texts on the intensive course with The Economist. If you've not used those texts, those questions that I've been doing in the intensive course of the TPS, then go there, okay? Use them. It's great questions there. I'm very proud of myself. I'm sure one of those texts, if I've used The Economist, is going to come up in the exam, and the style of questions there are exactly the style used on this exam, okay? So what possible subjects could be on the text? Well, it could be difficult. What do you think could be on the text? Right? Well, as I said, The Economist must be something, okay? But we have got, of course, we've been through Ernest Ernesto. His time at the etymology as leader of etymology as chancellor is over, but he did implant a new philosophy in the etymology. And of course, I don't think they've had a lot of chance to change the exam. So here, this was the information that came back when he went to the Senate in 2020, and he put forward what his philosophy for international relations, or to represent Brazil, was. He had 4 pillars. What they mean is another thing. New democratic principles, of course, the new values, democracy, sovereignty, and economic transformation. Okay, now it's a legacy, what he tried to do. He tried to see what he's trying to do. But of course, we see areas like Palestine and Israel as a problem at the moment. Okay, terrorism, he talked about all of these at the Senate, but of course, Venezuela and communism, communist China were 2 areas. So if we look at texts, as we saw last year, we saw something against communism, okay, communism was used. But if we look at CESP over the last years, we see a left-leaning, clear idea of the text. I went through all of them. What was the ideology of CESP? And Iages has a more conservative, traditionalist view. So that's how we can understand what types of texts would be. Last year we had about communism. We had things that are more conservative, okay? And as we see here, we see, of course, arguments against multilateralism, looking at more bilateralism. He's dealing more with Israel. Again, ideology, more conservative ideology, more traditional and less left-wing ideology. So there'd be less about, I don't know, the environment. But if it's about the environment, it will probably look at it in a more conservative way. If it's looking about equality, it's not going to have texts that are more, let's say, LGBT informed, okay? So, the style of text will be probably more conservative, okay? So probably if you know the text is going to be about the environment or about LGBT, it's probably like we saw in last year when we talked about communism, it will be, let's say, debunking it or going against it, all right? Which was an interesting text last year. Okay, so trying to guess what type of text. The Economist, of course, or similar text you should be reading. Last year we had this Oxford exam on international relations. So basic diplomacy reading that you use in international relations, those main books that probably you're given at the start of international relations course and graduate courses, okay? They're the books that maybe you can go back and have a read. Short literary text was used from the US, it's used in the past. We've done lots of practice on all of these texts, okay? Can't reiterate for you to go back and look at the questions I've done over the last months on the intensive. If you've not done them, and you do them over the next few days before the exam, and it gets you into the mindset necessary for this test. And this mindset is what you've got to do. Where is it, my thing? This change, okay? My concern, of course, is the English, is that you're dealing in Portuguese all of the time. When it comes to the exam, you've got to make that change your head. Think, take a book with you at lunchtime on Sunday and read a little bit of English, okay? So when you come, it's 12% of the overall score, okay? So it's very important, English. So sometimes making that change is sometimes difficult. So then you don't have any chance, you've got a change, and that's very important. Let's make that change. Let's get to Rio Branco, so you'll be able to buy a new suit or buy a new dress, okay? You'll be here in Brasilia, You might meet me one day and have your picture taken with Ataspokan behind. And that's what we've got to focus, to make that change, of course, make that change in your lives. And that's what we're here for here at Clipping. And all of the teachers want the same thing as me. Okay, fine, good. Let's have a look at this. Any more questions? Okay. So let's have a look. Swathe, okay, Leandro, okay, Mr. Dowling, is swathe a British spelling or swath? Well, it needs the E. It's pronounced, I'd have to check that, okay? I think the text seemed, swathe, I think it's both, but it's swathe. I don't think swath, you check for me, Leandro. I haven't got time really to look at the dictionary here, okay? Okay, good. Thank you, Corella. I'm glad you liked Orwell. Yes. As I said, Ron Danielle and I are fans. Of course, I like him for his level of English and analyze of the text. And it's the level that can be on the exam. In the intensive, I used, I think, 3 texts of Orwell with questions, and also in CESP, in 2 exams, the translation was also Orwell, okay? Whereas the Road to Wigan Pier, I think, was one, and was the other one Animal Farm? But I've been using it also in translations as well. All right, then we do, I've just seen that one. I'll just go to the other one. Okay, The Economist, you can get 5 texts for free, reading them, okay? So if you want to pay, of course, it's expensive, but they will give you 5 texts for free. So be careful when you use it, okay? There is limited, but you can search the whole thing. So looking at areas of science, as well as, yeah, let's say the environment, and look at those subject, democracy, sovereignty, those areas that might come up on the text. Those, remember I said those 4 pillars. So if you go into the Economist and search, say sovereignty, or search maybe even environment, then you look at those texts to analyze, okay? Not everything. It's not necessarily actual politics now. The texts they use are more general, okay? So in science. Yeah, I think it's 5 texts, Angelica, you can use, okay? Yeah, look at the editorial text is good. So do I recognize any reading techniques? Well, yes, I do. I have lots of reading techniques, but the main one is focusing on vocabulary and collocations, okay? If you look at me on Instagram, one of my IGTV videos is how to organize your vocabulary, how to strategize your learning by a simple notebook and writing down information, getting a notebook, something I can do, get a notebook and write down the verbs and the nouns, the adjectives and nouns. Don't necessarily look at single words, because now we're looking at lexis, all right? Anything else? Good. So I recommend, of course, good reading. You know, of course, Orwell is an easy text to get hold of. All right. Yeah, the lucky pen is very important. It works, guaranteed it works. Okay. All of my students and the teachers I've taught all know about the lucky pen. All right. 2 special things to learn English. You need the lucky pen and the elixir of life, some Marmite. Marmite will get you speaking English like the best gringo there are, okay? I'm not going to say anything about Marmite because that's a flavor for you to enjoy when you travel to England, when you're representing Brazil. at the embassy, okay? Of course, and you see, my students at the embassy now getting all of the shirts signed by all of those football players. I'm very jealous. Okay, good. Anything else? Okay, recommended reading. So Thais is The Economist mainly, because the texts are okay. If you want literary, look at Orwell, look at the New York Magazine, and look at the literary section as well. New York Magazine, again, you're limited what you can see there. Okay, good, Lucas, 7 pens, take all 7 pens to the test. Okay, so when one doesn't work, the other one will help your memory. Okay, good. I think that's it. Okay. Okay, then repeat the tips on the no sentences. Okay, so that lucky pen helps. Get the lucky pen. When there's a negative, that's what can make you confused, okay? Understanding the meaning. So putting your finger over that or putting a line through the negative. Remember, the negative can be a prefix as well, like in or un, all right? So making, paying attention to the negatives is very important. It could be didn't as well, not, or never. All right, so they can make you confused, okay? Because you're reading something and then you see the negative and then the whole meaning changes, you know. That's what can make it difficult. So by either putting a line through the negative or just putting your finger over the negative and reading the sentence again calms you down, makes you clearer what the meaning is of that statement, okay? And that's what you got. Now I'm clear what the meaning is. Now I'm going to look for the text. And I'm looking in the text, and the text might have a negative as well. So again, you put your finger over it, or you the negative word, or you put a line through that negative word and read that sentence again. So you've got 2 positives there. All right. Remember, if one part, if the readings are negative and the statement's got a positive, then there will be the logical difference. Okay, so it's trying to make things more logical, more clear by, you know, removing the difficulty or the weight of the meaning, right? It's a technique you can do, all right? They work all of the time, no, but you've got to try and simplify the meaning. And negatives could change the meaning completely, all right? So always consider that. Put your magic pen over the statement, which with it's got the negative in, and read it again without the negative. All right, so that's the only way. It's practice, of course, it's practice. But when you get to the question, you say, there's a negative. Now you know, I've got to be careful. All right, now you see there's this statement, and they've got 2 sections. You're going to, now I've got to be careful of that statement. There are 2 areas I can think logically about that. I'll find the first area in the text, and I'll find the second area text. Bring the question down to make it easier for you, all right? Don't read it and panic. Take a breath, take water, get your magic pen, underline the information, okay, in the text. You know, that the stress is what can kill you, especially when you start the exam with English, all right? So, because that's the main problem, okay? Is that stress. You're in it with another language, another culture, another thought, another, you know, and so you've got to make things clearer for yourself. Okay, good. Great, Caroline, I'm pleased. Okay, great. At Cultura Inglesa, that was a long time ago. 10 years ago, I was at, 10 years ago, I left Cultura Inglesa, and here I am clipping. Of course, I work, if you don't know who I am, okay, I work a lot. Of course, I worked for 10 years at Rio Branco. I teach at Ministério Público. I've had courses at the STF. I teach at OAB, so I deal with lawyers and diplomats a lot. I teach a very high level of the government. I've taught president of STF, president of the Câmara dos Deputados. So people who are communicating in English representing the Brazil abroad. So international cooperation, different areas, they want something specific, and that's what I do. Okay, so diplomacy, legal areas are those areas I tend to teach. I teach at EDP, graduate courses there, and there's a few other things coming up in the fire. But we're focused on you. After this, we've got the second phase course. We're going to go for it with and so fingers crossed you get these the points you need. And then will be the main thing for second phase is composition and summary. Composition and summary, okay? Very, very important. The translations you leave to last. But we'll look at that in the second phase. You need exam technique. Again, you need to be calm. You need to know what you're doing. And you need to know the path that you've got to fulfill for 5 hours of second phase. But that's for another time, okay? We're putting this together at the moment, me and the other teachers. So Elise will give you more information on this at the time. But in the moment, please pass the TPS for me. Make me happy. All right. My children are the same age as you, so I want the same as I would for my children. I want you to pass. Okay. Don't think there's anything else. All the best. Fingers crossed. Don't take any risks. Be sure. Look for those easy questions like the reference questions. Be clear the difficult questions of the vocabulary like sway, maybe strain. Be careful with them. If you're not sure, don't answer them. The reading comprehension questions, you should be able to use that magic pen, underline the information in the text that gives you the information and then evaluate it, okay? So be very systematic, be very logical, and then you get those answers. The deduction questions, you have to know all of the text. Be careful with them. But remember, the majority will be, play it safe and always play it safe, okay? Remember, if you find you're getting about 50% you've answered, you need to take a risk. Of course, you need to take a risk. If you're not doing well, then it's necessary because you want to pass, you want to get up. But see if you're doing well on the other sections first, okay? English can be a bit more dangerous with those difficult vocabulary questions. Sometimes I do have problems myself. All right, so I have to think and double think because the examiner is a little bit crazy. So just make sure you see those. The reference ones are easy. You should get them. Some of the vocabulary are quite easy too. They're obvious, but the reading comprehensions are the ones you should be getting because all the information is within the text. So it's not something you have to have studied English to a high level to understand the meaning of words. All the information should be in the text. The code text and the context are there. So they should give you the clues to get the right question, okay? So be in the afternoon, maybe read something before you go into the exam, just something in English, okay? Get you thinking, and then with all those other questions, fingers crossed, everything is all right. If you've looked at the intensive course, you've done the intensive course, great. If not, go to the intensive course next few days. Those texts and questions, especially vocabulary questions, are very good, all right? But I suggest the day before, on Friday, maybe you don't do a lot. You go for a walk, okay? Talk to your friends, don't drink any alcohol, and get a good night's sleep, which is impossible, really, okay? Good, okay, there's a link there for the next, if you want to join me in the next phase and the other teachers as well, okay? I watched Tungai this morning. All of that information he's giving you is also very good. One thing he said, I'm going to mention one thing, last thing. One thing he said, which I found was very interesting for English, that there's been more concentration about international relations policy of other countries, United States, China, rather than Brazilian foreign policy. And that was interesting because in the second phase, you focus more on other countries than you do Brazil, okay? So if you've been studying well with him, that will help with the content you need for answering the questions, okay? But that's for another time. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for coming. All right, all of the best. Fingers crossed, and look forward to seeing you in the next course, okay? Beijos, everyone. Ciao, ciao.